This is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily Bloomberg iHeart podcast, and I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael, managing editor of crypto for Bloomberg News. It's Monday, December 5th. The interplay of money and politics in the US is real and well established. And that includes when that money is either in the form of crypto or comes from people who made their fortunes in digital assets. The recently concluded US midterm elections featured several candidates, including winning ones, whose campaigns were financed in part by crypto-related donors and donations. Among those donors, Sam Bankman-Fried and Ryan Salame of FTX, who supported candidates on opposite ends of the political spectrum, to be clear. The collapse of FTX has now led to some of those same politicians and lawmakers who received donations from people like Bankman-Fried and Salame to attempt to distance themselves entirely from their benefactors. For more on the state of crypto, money, and politics in the US, we're joined by Bloomberg reporters Allison Versprille.
Sam Bankman-Fried gave about $39 million during the midterms, almost all of it to Democrats. But Ryan gave about $23 million, mostly to Republicans.
And Bill Allison.
If you look at the numbers, it's the FTX donors. There were three big donors. They represented about 80% of everything that crypto gave during the cycle.
Bill, welcome back to the podcast. Please reintroduce yourself to our audiences.
I'm Bill Allison. I cover politics and campaign finance.
And Allie, great to have you back on the show.
I'm Allison Versprille, and I cover crypto regulation.
So, between regulation and campaign finance and politics, some things have been happening recently, I think it's fair to say. Bill, for people who don't sort of obsessively follow the twists and turns of either campaign finance or US politics, can you just do a quick scene setter? What's been happening and what are the interconnections that you're observing between crypto and US politics right now?
Well, we just had a midterm election, which is when, generally speaking, the party that holds the White House loses a lot of seats in Congress, and this is to elect basically the House and the Senate. And we were expecting, and even, a lot of people predicting a red wave for Republicans to do really well, taking the House by a wider margin, taking the Senate. And instead, we kind of had a status quo midterm. Democrats are right now even where they were in the Senate. They may even pick up one more seat. And Republicans have narrowly won the House. Now, what this means for Washington is that we're going to be in a state of gridlock. That's about where we are right now. And, crypto kind of falls into the middle of this because it is going to be an issue in the next Congress, given what's happened with FTX.
A lot of development since the stunning collapse of former billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried's FTX empire last week. One of the two biggest crypto exchanges in the world is no more. There are now reports of unauthorized withdrawals of funds after FTX and related entities were placed in bankruptcy. And that suggests that customers who are not able to withdraw funds are unlikely to recover much of their
There have been accusations that it was misappropriating funds, using its ties with Alameda Research, the trading arm that was also founded by Sam Bankman-Fried. And so we've definitely seen failures across the board that's now rippling throughout the crypto markets broadly. And we're starting to see other companies suffer as well. So it's been a busy few weeks in the crypto space, if that might be the understatement of the century.
As all of us can confirm, the level of busyness. And, Bill, just to go back to your point, so the folks who were elected or not elected in some cases, roughly what was the split in terms of either whether they were kind of funded by crypto money or had taken positions on crypto in one way or the other?
So, crypto candidates did reasonably well. Among the people that they backed were, like, for example, John Fetterman, the Senate candidate from Pennsylvania, Democrat. He won his election. A lot of the people that were backed by something called the GMI PAC and the Web3 Forward PAC, House and Senate candidates did well. So, a lot of things broke the way that the crypto industry wanted, but we're only talking really about, maybe, 15, 20 people, and in a Congress of, 435 House members and 100 senators, that's not definitive. But this is sort of how things go in Washington, that you kind of get the beachhead of people who care about your issue and know about your industry in place. And then, the idea is that then you would work with the lobbyists, or they would work with the lobbyists and other folks who are part of the government relations people from that industry, who would, basically spread the word to other members of Congress. And, so in that sense, I think that crypto was able to do what it wanted to.
One of the things that has not necessarily been clear is that there is like a unified crypto ask, as it were, right? And a big criticism levied against Sam Bankman-Fried is that he had positioned himself as this person who was advocating for certain types of regulation, ostensibly on behalf of the whole crypto industry, but in terms of the details, in ways that would have benefited his particular slice of that industry in particular. Are there other things that over the course of the midterms, or at least the candidacy of the midterms, that you saw sort of emerge as campaign issues? If I would have put it another way, like, did the average person voting in these elections, were they voting on because I'm pro or against Bitcoin, or was it just that these candidates happen to have money flowing into them from crypto candidates, if that makes sense?
I would say it's much more the latter. There weren't really people who were running strictly on crypto. Getting back to John Fetterman, a lot of his campaign was that his opponent had moved to the state recently from New Jersey. So
his opponent, Dr. Oz.
His opponent, yes, Dr. Oz, the celebrity physician. When we talk to people who are, we're kind of in the space in the political realm, when they're looking for candidates, it's not necessarily that they're looking for experts on crypto or people who are, completely immersed in the industry. But what they were looking for was, kind of younger candidates, people who were open to crypto. Maybe they had a friend who invested. A lot of the super PAC kind of candidate recruitment stuff that went on, and in terms of backing the candidates, it's not really candidate recruitment, but choosing candidates, they were just looking for people who would be open to and understand and have some basic background in crypto, and obviously, think that it's something that's important and needs to go forward. But when you get into the nitty gritty of what American politicians run their campaigns on, it's a lot of negative ads and a lot of mudslinging. And, this is not the place where you have serious policy discussions about digital assets.
And I'll just back up that point. I think the strategy going forward is going to be to continue targeting these younger candidates. I talked to the executive director of the Blockchain Association, which recently launched their own PAC that we expect will be more active in sort of the coming elections. And that was essentially what they laid out to me, that they feel like these older lawmakers are not as receptive to maybe new technologies. And so that's really what they're targeting. I guess it remains to be seen now what the attitude's like, given everything that's been happening in crypto and the more recent calls for regulation. But we'll have to see how that shapes up.
Well, to that point, there's an interesting thing that happens in politics, but also I think in general, where someone can go from hero to zero in a very short amount of time. And as we've been reporting, various of the folks who had previously been tripping over themselves to be in photo ops with Bankman-Fried are now to quote Mariah Carey famously, I don't know her. How is that shaping up going into, this next round of things? Are you going to see, or are you already seeing a sense that crypto is now being perceived as this toxic asset that nobody wants to touch? Or is it opening up the discussion about here's actually why we need to engage with digital assets more seriously?
I think we're seeing a couple things. You're definitely seeing lawmakers distancing themselves from Sam Bankman-Fried. So a good example of that is Senator Dick Durbin was one of those people who received contributions from Sam. And he's now saying that he's going to give that money to charity. He's also one of the ones leading some of the probes into Bankman-Fried, along with Senator Elizabeth Warren. They're both seeking more information on what happened when the company collapsed. So you're definitely seeing kind of a turning of the tables. I think we're also seeing this getting highly politicized. You have Missouri Republican Josh Hawley is now sort of coming after Democrats who took money from Bankman-Fried and looking for information from federal agencies and Democrats that were engaging with him. Worth noting that it wasn't only Democrats that were receiving money from FTX. Obviously, Ryan Salame was a big donor as well, and he gave almost exclusively to Republicans. So everyone is sort of caught up in this.
And Ryan Salame, of course, being one of the co-CEOs of one of the FTX-related entities, FTX Trading, which he helped Sam Bankman-Fried set up, being this major Republican donor, as you've identified.
Yes, that's right. I mean, we saw that Sam Bankman-Fried gave about $39 million during the midterms, almost all of it to Democrats. But Ryan gave, about $23 million, mostly to Republicans. So it was still a lot of money coming to the Republican side as well.
Coming up, more on crypto's influence on regulation and politics in the U.S. with Allison Versprille and Bill Allison. Now, going into 2023, even 2024, we're sort of staring down a presidential election somehow. I feel like we're somehow always in a presidential election. Given the dynamics that you've both just described, and Bill, I'll ask you this first, do you expect, given kind of the state of crypto right now, where valuations are, where sentiment is, that you'll see the record highs of donations from crypto-affiliated groups that we'd been seeing for previous cycles? Or do you think that was kind of like the top of that level of giving from this industry?
If you look at the numbers, I mean, it's the FTX donors. There were three big donors. They represented about 80% of everything that crypto gave during this cycle. I mean, altogether it was about, 80 some million dollars. And, they were basically providing the bulk of it. So the fact that they may not be in the position to donate, that was obviously going to put a big crimp in how much money this industry is going to put into politics. But that being said, there's all kinds of different ways to have a big footprint in Washington. One of the traditional way, if you look at a financial firm, I'm just going to pick them, Goldman Sachs, which has been very influential, has a strong presence in Washington, has lobbyists, has a political action committee. Goldman Sachs folks aren't making $1 million contributions to super PACs. They're making contributions to party committees. They're making contributions to candidates. They're making contributions to leadership PACs. They have an active political action committee. And that's really, I think, where you may see crypto going, is instead of being this big splash, three people giving tens of millions of dollars, you're going to see a lot of smaller donors, but potentially having a bigger, more distributed impact.
And I would say it probably also depends on where we stand on the regulatory and legislative front the next time we have an election, right? If there's still a lot up in the air and there's potential to, influence what's going on Capitol Hill or at these agencies, then I think you could see a lot of crypto executives giving money in an attempt to sway the narrative there.
If they still have money.
That is true.
We shall just have to see which way markets go. Bill, just as a kind of a closing thought for you, as someone who's covered campaign finance for such a long time, can you think of any other industries that sort of kind of came out of nowhere as it relates to giving? Like, did we see something like this in the middle days of tech, for instance? Because, folks are always trying to, figure out, like, what is crypto like? And at least in terms of this part of the markets, are there progenitors, as it were, for this level of giving from a relatively new industry and asset class?
I mean, the things that it most reminds me of, tech is an example where Microsoft had almost a monopoly in terms of, not just software for your operating system, but also things like browsers and Microsoft Word and the Office suite. And they had hardly any presence in Washington at all until Washington started to get interested in them and started investigating them for antitrust. And Microsoft went from hardly lobbying at all to building up almost overnight. They had their DC office, they had their PAC, they were giving lots of money. And, that's the sort of the That's sort of I don't know if I would necessarily call it positive, but that's kind of like the successful version of it. A less successful version, and this was a company that had been around for a long time, was Enron, where you have, they're in this new deregulated world of utilities and natural gas, and they had very close ties to the Bush family going all the way back. Ken Lay, who was the company's CEO, was George H.W. Bush's head of finance, so he was his top fundraiser. They were the biggest patron for George W. Bush when he was in Texas in terms of campaign contributions and donations and whatnot. And when that company collapsed, everybody walked away from it. I mean, George W. Bush said that he hardly knew anybody at Enron. And I guess the point is, it's not necessarily, one company, although obviously Enron was, a huge story at the time. But, you can walk away from a company, but not necessarily the industry.
And just because everything in finance is somehow a circle, the person who helped liquidate Enron and get cash back to those creditors, John J. Ray III, is now doing that for FTX. So, as one does. Here we are. Well, thank you both very much. It's always a pleasure having you on, and I'm sure we'll have you back again soon, since there is so much in this area to talk about.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
You can find more of their reporting on the Bloomberg Terminal and on Bloomberg.com. And of course, check out our twice-weekly newsletter, which is called, you guessed it, Bloomberg Crypto. This is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily podcast from Bloomberg and iHeartRadio. For more shows from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Send us your comments, questions, or suggestions for the show to crypto@bloomberg.net. The supervising producer of Bloomberg Crypto is Vicky Vergolina. Our senior producer is Janet Babin. Our producers are Mohammed Farouk and Sharon Barrero. Our associate producers are Ty Butler and Moses Undum. Desta Wonderad is our engineer. Original music by Leo Sidran. I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael. We'll be back tomorrow.